What's going on, you guys? My name's Ty Knotts and welcome to Top 5 Unknowns, 5 dark CIA programs that may still exist today. Number 5. Operation Mockingbird was a CIA program that was created in response to the CIA's interest in better controlling American media. It's been known for years that the CIA has been hiring reporters and journalists to assist in developing intelligence and information gathering, as well as gathering information about other countries' perceptions of the US. However, the CIA was also involved in bribing or simply paying off certain journalists to employ propaganda into their broadcasts or reports to help better sway American opinion in a way that would benefit the CIA. For the most part, this program was employed to keep Americans away from the idea of communism, as it was a rising issue in the mid to late 20th century. Since this program was created decades before the internet was commonplace, this meant that many important events that took place overseas were excluded from the US media, leaving US citizens completely in the dark about what was going on in the world around them. This led many Americans to easily believe that any sort of conflict that took place between foreign and local governments must have been the opposing country's fault, as the US had painted quite a beautiful image for itself at the time. In fact, if not all, US citizens were blissfully unaware of the US conflicts that were taking place in Guatemala at the time, with none of this coming out in American media until years later. Congress held several meetings in the mid-1970s about this, and it was revealed and confirmed that the CIA had been bribing journalists for years. The director of the CIA at the time, George H.W. Bush, announced that the CIA program would be concluded immediately, and that no further dealings with the media would be had. However, one clever excerpt from his statement claims that the CIA would continue to employ assistance of unpaid or voluntary journalists. So, in a sense, the operation is still ongoing today. And considering the CIA's track record with lying, it's safe to assume that virtually nothing probably changed since that 1976 meeting. But let us know what you think. Number 4. In the mid-1960s, protests against the US involvement in the Vietnam War were beginning to become a problem, as they were becoming more widespread and more frequent. Operation Chaos took place at the same time as Operation Mockingbird. The programs worked hand in hand to eliminate any pushback from American citizens about entering a war. In fact, Operation Mockingbird was being used in this instance to normalize the idea of war and push the idea that it was necessary for any sort of real change to actually take place. In turn, Operation Chaos was an idea in which CIA operatives would infiltrate counterculture groups or hippie groups, as you may more easily know them as, and sway their opinion on war from the inside out. President Johnson authorized this plan, and many student groups and colleges were to become part of the operation. They're known to have drastically affected the Students for Democratic Society movement, as well as the Black Panthers. Eventually, though, they even began to move into women's rights groups and even Jewish groups, though the reasoning behind this remains a bit unclear. There exists a considerable amount of evidence that even today this operation is still ongoing. In fact, in 2011, it came to light that the CIA had been affecting certain Muslim groups in the New York area, working alongside the NYPD to make this happen. There's absolutely no telling just how deep this rabbit hole goes and how much impact the CIA could have on today's counter movements. Number 3. The CIA is also known to have previously, and likely currently, employed psychics to assist in their investigations and programs. The main way they're known to have employed these individuals was for practice of remote viewing documents, meaning that psychics were able to read sealed envelopes or see the inside of inaccessible buildings and describe them accurately to everyday operatives. The strangest part of this, though, is that the psychics were extremely accurate in their dealings. Many of these individuals could provide some creepy details that truly make you wonder if their supposed powers were genuine. In one instance, the CIA managed to supply a psychic with a long-distance message by writing it on a sheet of paper, and having another psychic from an entirely different building manage to read it word for word. In another case, CIA operatives created a computer program in a sealed room that would generate a string of zeros and ones across the screen, and a psychic managed to accurately reproduce the patterns of the numbers. They were even having these people go through classified documents that they had on hand, and the psychics were able to accurately describe the buildings in which the documents were located, describe the color of the paper, the writings on them, and even the topics and lengths of the discussions. Remote viewing such as this is completely unexplainable, but there are allegations that these missions are still ongoing to this day due to their success many years ago. There exists virtually no evidence that these plans were ever formally concluded. Number 2. Operation Northwoods isn't so much of an ongoing program, but rather it could have potentially led to other equally disturbing programs that very likely could still be ongoing to this day. Operation Northwoods was the CIA's attempt to fake terroristic events on US soil. For many 9/11 conspiracy theorists, this probably sounds eerily similar to the ideas that you've been pondering for years. The plan was created and approved in the 1960s and called for innocent people on American soil to be shot or otherwise harmed, with the blame being successfully pinned on individuals who could vary from Muslims to African Americans to attackers from foreign countries. People would be, and likely were, framed for crimes they didn't even commit, with plans for planes to be hijacked and blamed on foreign countries, which again sounds familiar to many conspiracy theorists out there. At the time that this program was created, the idea was to pin many of these deeds on Castro, who was becoming a growing problem for the US at the time. One of the most disturbing proposals of this plan was to be carried out in 1962. John Glenn was set to orbit the Earth, carrying alongside him banners that claimed America's freedom and independence and democracy. But the CIA had other plans. They proposed that the rocket carrying John should explode, and that the catastrophe should then be blamed on Castro and the communists in Cuba. Luckily, this plan never came to fruition, but Operation Northwoods as a whole really makes you question some of America's most recent supposed terroristic attacks from the mid-80s and onward. Number 1. While this final topic may have been somewhat predictable, by far one of the CIA's darkest and most troubling operations was MKULTRA. MKULTRA was launched in the early 1950s and allegedly ended in the 1960s, though documents have proven that this is false and that the program didn't end until at least the 80s, but many claim that it's still ongoing in some capacity to this day. The program appears to have involved several types of drugs and mental procedures. They'll be carried out on unknowing American people, with the idea behind it being to discover ways to manipulate the American population or brainwash them into believing certain propaganda more easily. Many of these experiments, or at least the more popular ones, included dosing patients with LSD. Some of these patients even being CIA employees, military, doctors, or other unknowing patients such as kidnapped homeless individuals or even prostitutes. The big issue for this was that not only was it completely unethical and a crime against humanity, but it was also illegal on an international level, as it violated the Nuremberg Code that had been established and accepted internationally after World War II. This could have posed very serious issues for the US that could have resulted in another outbreak of war. What makes this entire event worse, though, is that in 1973, the director of the CIA ordered that all files pertaining to MKULTRA be destroyed. This means that the depth and animosity of the CIA's experiments will never truly be known, as only a small handful of documents still exist to this day from this almost unbelievable program. Countless individuals, likely thousands, were tortured by the hands of the CIA, both physically and even chemically. And although the results of the investigation were considered to be successful, we have to ask ourselves, at what cost? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.